Here, look. Okay, I can still see the bear. It's crossing the road. That was a surprise. Basically what happened was I got to right about here in this brushy area. And apparently the bear was there. I wonder if it was setting up to ambush me. Whatever happened, it had to be keenly aware I was there, and then it just snorted and took off running after it saw me look at it. It's a pretty sizable bear, and it's making its way in the general direction of where I parked. So I'm gonna continue my run. That way I can head back towards the car, and I'll make a decision from there. I actually can see the bear on the road. Yeah, it's just walking up the road, but I'm gonna get going. I'm telling you, you never know what you're gonna see out here.
Welcome back, everybody. It is June the 14th, and I'm feeling pretty good. I got my morning run in today. It was just under 5 kilometers. It was 3.07 or 3.05 miles, and it was tempo. It was tempo running, so threshold, I'm sorry. So threshold is a slightly higher heart rate. It would have been more difficult for me to talk while I was doing that run. And on the smart device that I have, the way that it gets you into that workout is to run for 10 minutes at the lowest heart rate that you've got. For me, I think that the average is supposed to be like 145 beats per minute for my running experience so far, as an example. And then when you go to the tempo side of the running, tempo is basically, I think, what you're supposed to be running at tempo wise when you do something like a 5K or a 10K, when you actually do your race, because you really shouldn't race at full speed every time, right? So anyway, for the tempo, my heart rate was supposed to be in the range of 167 beats per minute. And so somewhere within that variation is where I was to run for 22 minutes today. So 10-minute warm up, 22 minutes at the higher heart rate, and then 10 minutes of cool down. And I did that on the main park road today, just as the sun was coming up. In fact, the sun was still over the horizon before I started running, or when I started running, I should say, to be more accurate. And the sun did start to rise while I was on my run, and to do that, again, took waking up early, which seems to happen naturally here. It's not waking up early because I have an urgent need to go to the bathroom or anything like that. It's just waking up early. Like maybe the birds themselves are triggering things, but one of the aspects of how I try to quantify, well, why does this work differently than trying to do the same thing in a city environment? One of the things I noticed today was there's a clear shift in the temperature variation between night and day. And it's day and night, really. And to spend your time under the envelope of everything that is natural, including the natural warming and cooling cycles that we previously would have experienced, allows us to do things like, if you have to walk out, let's say in a city, between a building and another building or something like that, or from between a building to a car, and that's the most you ever have to do, in general, you wouldn't need to put on new physical attire just to move from one enclosure to another, right? But in today's world, we get to a point where it's like every single little variable we want to moderate. Like as soon as we step out of the vehicles, I've seen carloads of people getting out and spraying all this bug repellent all over. And I've heard conversations about, oh, well, it's got DEET, and really we shouldn't use it if it has this percent, X, Y, or Z percentage. And I hear all these conversations, but I hear them less and less when I wake up, when you're supposed to wake up. And when I wake up when I'm supposed to wake up and get the day started, it's almost like I have this whole place to myself for the entire day. And that's one of the more unique things that comes from not just falling into the set patterns of, for an example, waking up and going to the breakfast buffet every morning, or having to get that cup of coffee every morning, or there's things that we get into the habit of doing, and some of those habits are fundamentally eroding the opportunity to get the day started. I know that a lot of you who are listening to this channel, because this is a pretty deep thinking channel, a lot of you are listening and you're hearing it, and you're also putting this into real-time perspective, going, Well, this guy's he's been sitting in the desert. Well, actually, it's been in the mountains, although it is pretty hot in the mountains in this particular region, and in the desert. So I've spent my time in the desert, in the mountains, and believe it or not, also in the river. So there's 3 different things here in this park to really set apart any other places' well-being and recovery opportunities from this place. This place is so unique that I almost don't want to tell you about it, because the more that people find out about this, obviously, the more that people tend to come out here. The thing is that the people who are watching this video are probably good, respectable people who will understand what I'm trying to say. It's like we've all done, silly things. We've all done irresponsible things. We've all been children. Some of us are still children. But there's a difference between being a child at heart and being aggressive. To have aggressive tendency, let's say you have 2 children, and we have birds making noises and stuff like that. And let's say that you give these 2 children a rock at random. In some cases, a child might want to throw a rock at something, and the other child will not want to do that. It seems like that's a natural thing. In the tendencies, usually they seem to be a little bit different between males and females. And I don't know how far any real world observations can go to try and track, well, did this come from influence from television? What did it come from? I can't tell you how far that it would take to look back to that, but I can tell you that in the past, it was less likely to see female hostility towards anybody, and when I say that, it's not a judgment, it's an observation. And to me, that's beautiful, to actually have wanted to use conversation first rather than war techniques. Like I said, if you hand 2 kids a rock, and one throws a rock, it's like, especially to hurt some other creature, either maybe they have had that happen to them, and so they want to take out that aggression on someone else, or they just have no concept of what happened. The thoughts of responsibility can be absolutely learned. It just has to do with whether or not someone wants to learn something. So if somebody wants to learn, and if they're like, well, I want to learn, Ray, but every time you talk about something, you forget your story. And you're right, because I was just telling a story the other day about how this moth landed on me, and I never finished it. But what I was going to say is, the bear didn't scare me, but when I got the moth, and when I looked, and when it fell and suddenly jumped and flew out of my open sunroof, I actually made a noise. I yelped or something. I don't know what happened, but it startled me. And it startled me because of just how fast it was. So I guess, if the bear had hit me the right way, it could have surprised me. But for whatever reason, we'll call it by the grace of God at this point, for whatever reason, that possible deadly situation that was sent to intersect me that day still resulted in a pretty amazing story. I got to see a bear in the desert, and it ran from me because it was afraid. But I don't really like that. I don't like it to be afraid. I don't like things to be afraid of me, The natural tendency, though, is for anything that might have been sent to kill, steal, or destroy, it's possible that if that bear were there to, to enjoy my life, to sustain its, in other words, to destroy my life, if it had intent to destroy my life, it's possible that because of prayer and fasting, it's possible that because of this, some of the weird age-related circumstances that I'm telling you I'm reversing right now, and that you can see that I'm reversing, it's possible that there is something to this physical, spiritual, and emotional balance that people often talk about. But how can we really take time to observe those things if we can't take time even while we're here to observe those things? So that brings to mind an interesting concept from the former corporate employer that I used to be at. Be here now is a concept, and it's a book, and it's something that basically, if you were to read it, you would probably be someone who would be listening to a video like this. It's deep, it's challenging. A lot of the things that are worth learning in life are challenging. And I was just thinking the other day, over this past 8 months, I've learned to run. I've learned to control my breathing while I'm running. I've learned to solve a Rubik's Cube. There's many things that I've learned to do recently where I keep thinking it just, it gets more and more fun. And for me, fun is the fundamental part of how it is that we're supposed to be passing our time. So I know a lot of us enjoy following the banquets, and feasts and celebrations that occur when we celebrate people's lives. I told you when I came here, I wanted to come out here to celebrate my cousin's life, and I wish he were here. If he had seen any of what I got to see, I think that he would have gotten a kick out of it. Someone who is an avid outdoorsman, who was lost way too soon, he would have enjoyed this stuff. And I think, honestly, anyone would, if they were in the right mindset. They would enjoy learning all these neat things from a fanatic, from a true fan of wildlife and nature. That's me. So there are a lot of people out here who ask me, well, who are you compared to our wildlife biologist? Well, they just don't know. The former rangers that used to work here, they all know me. And the former rangers all know me. Many of them have taken rides with me. And some of them took a ride with me because they wanted to see their first bear or some interesting wildlife that they hadn't seen before. So that's just basically, that's how long I've been visiting this park. That's how much information I have about this place. And with that type of experience, there also is a very keen awareness of what type of wildlife is here, what type of wildlife has been here, and what type of wildlife I'm not seeing during key time frames in this area that used to be here. And I know it's going to persist because, well, like I showed on one clip, there are a ton of bugs here now. All the bugs are out, but there are just a few less bats circling the area at the same time. But as the populations improve, if given the chance, I think that we're still set with some possibility of restoring order in a way that makes it more convenient for all of us. So I hope that makes sense. Until next time, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.